Hello everyone, my name is Jack, and today I'm going to take a look at another horrific case with you. This story took place in Spokane, Washington, the second largest city in the state and the center of the so-called inland Northwest. The name of the city comes from the Spokane tribe, which translated the local Native American languages into the Salon languages as Children of the Sun. However, in the modern world, Spokane is notorious for its dichotomy, being as beautiful and appealing to tourists. According to state data, living outdoors can be just as dangerous for locals. Spokane County has the highest crime rate in Washington, double that of the state. Law enforcement indicates that most local-level offenses are related to domestic violence, which is why today's story of the Holden family, a normal American household that had lived in Spokane for a long time and loved children, had young Cinderella with a gorgeous facade and a bitter taste. The adult daughters had left the nest and lived, and Judy and John Holden had 2 kids and an adoptive boy named Joshua. Based on state data, living outside can be as risky for its citizens. Spokane County has the highest crime rate in Washington, double the state average. Law enforcement reports indicate that most local-level offenses are related to domestic violence, which is why today's story of a young Cinderella had a lovely appearance and a bitter flavor. The Holden family, a typical American family that had been in Spokane for a long time, loved children, which is why there were always kids in the house. The older daughters of Judy and John Holden had fled the nest and were living, together with their adopted son, Joshua. For a while, Joshua, their only child, lived independently, but Joshua stayed with his parents. Joshua was a large, depressed, and perpetually gloomy young man who had not been able to start his own family and was therefore reluctantly staying in his parental home. This family's approach to childcare was unconventional. It started and ended with simply providing shelter. The foster children were not lavished with love and care by Judy and John. Instead, they followed a rigid routine and received consequences for their transgressions. Eventually, the youngsters formed a tiny family. The Holden family was forced to take in more than just 1 or 2 children from the shelter due to Enterprise's desire to have a stable income in the form of significant benefits. Judy had an educational background and had raised her own grown children with successful lives, so the guardianship authorities trusted the family and initially placed children with them for foster care before agreeing to adopt Courtney, a sweet 4-year-old girl, one day. On February 28th, Courtney Corin Holden was born and arrived at the shelter in 1992. 2 years later, the girl's life in the shelter was not happy, as it was for all the kids there. Every day in the orphanage started with a prayer, where kids of all ages dreamily prayed to God to give them a mother and father. One happy day, the girl's wishes were granted, and little Courtney visited Spokane. When Courtney initially entered the Holden family's house, she was only 4 years old. If life in the shelter looked depressing and hopeless to Courtney at the Holden, it turned out that the girl was living with Joshua and a few other foster children when the door slammed behind her and her dreams of a loving and caring home remained just dreams. It was particularly shocking that the Holdens treated the other foster children much better and that no one could understand why they hated this pretty girl. This girl had nightmares from her early childhood, including having to clean the entire house, wash dishes for the family after every meal, and be punished if she made a mistake. Judy Holden had already reached a significant age at that point, and Courtney was the final kid they adopted from the orphanage. Perhaps this is where their mysterious animosity and hate for the girl was concealed. Courtney was even prohibited from leaving the house. With consent, neighbors would frequently hear Judy and Joshua mistreating Courtney and referring to her as Cinderella, a fictional princess who was actually the slave of her evil sisters and stepmother. Courtney discovered that she was in a similar situation, but the girl was very receptive, and over the years living with the Holdens became accustomed to the harsh circumstances. She feared her foster mother, and her brother Joshua instilled terror in her with just his presence. She had no mobile phone or other modern conveniences, and she never left the house without permission. Nevertheless, she enjoyed taking in the fresh air and chatting with neighbors. Courtney's upbringing was in such conditions that over time she grew into an adult and simply got used to her life. She didn't become bitter, but instead treated her foster parents with respect because she knew no other life and had no concept of a normal family. Courtney only left the house when it was empty and went outside into the backyard. When Joshua moved in with his sister after having irreconcilable differences with his parents, Courtney gained some much-needed freedom. This was the happiest time of her life, when she could finally enjoy the long-awaited taste of freedom, being able to walk outside and socialize with friends. Time went by. Following her graduation from high school, Courtney fell in love for the first time. Michael was a worthy partner for her, and she felt care and attention from a man she had never received from anyone else. Their relationship lasted until 2011, when they had a son. Michael begged his beloved to move in with him so they could live as a family, but the young mother refused, so they continued to live in the hated Holden's house and ended their romantic relationship. By that time, the Holden house was empty. The foster children had grown up and John Holden had moved out. After Courtney's foster father passed away, she was raised solely by her foster mother Judy for a considerable amount of time. Michael was only permitted to see his son with permission from the stepmother. Joshua, Courtney's brother, lived away from the family for a while, but after his father passed away in 2014, Joshua returned and started to terrorize the family home. He installed numerous surveillance cameras around the family's home on Hero Avenue, which is located near Rogers Middle School in northeast Spokane. Signs that said, "Smile, you're on camera," were scattered throughout the yard, and multiple cameras were pointed in different directions. Courtney became uneasy once more due to the monitoring cameras, as she was aware that going outside might result in Courtney's life became unbearable again around 2015. She confided to a neighbor that she was once again not allowed to have a mobile phone, manage social media accounts, talk to anyone outside her family, drive a car, or even leave the house without Joshua's permission. The birth of her child had so embittered Joshua Holden that he forced the young woman to cease all contact with her son's father, and Courtney silently complied. When neighbors noticed bruises on Courtney's face and arms, she answered honestly, "Josh hits me," concerned such treatment, and made every effort to assist her. They even called the police to bring attention to Courtney's situation, but each time the victim refused to publicly acknowledge that she was living under family control. The Holdens were able to have the case dismissed. Fear of her brother ultimately prevented Courtney from having the opportunity to speak with neighbors, who from that point on only saw her outside in the evenings because she was not permitted outside during the day. Courtney obediently obeyed once more in silence. No one knew Joshua as well as Courtney did. He was a tall, large, and overweight man with tremendous physical strength who never held back when making insults. Joshua's friends characterized him as a harsh, erratic man with a paranoid mindset, and Joshua had a notable criminal record. In 2005, he was charged with assault and harassment, but he was released from custody due to a lack of evidence and the victim's refusal to cooperate with the police. In 2003, he was suspected of assault and misconduct against a woman, but the perpetrator could not be identified. In 2006, Joshua was arrested for domestic violence against his mother and for burglary. These incidents caused him to flee from his parents' house for a number of years after his release. Joshua grew even more irrational, installing cameras both inside and outside the home to maintain total control over Courtney. The young mother mentioned that she was terrified to go anywhere for fear that Joshua would find out and things would get worse. Courtney had a daily Facebook communication with one individual until Joshua found out she had an account. "I have to go. I have to leave. Josh is coming," she claimed in her most recent post, which was sent over 2 years ago before her account vanished. People who knew the Holden family described the dynamics as peculiar, wondering why Courtney's child called Judy Mom and Joshua Dad, while his biological mother was only mentioned by her first name. This led some to speculate that Joshua might actually be the child's father. Neighbors and acquaintances criticized the Holden family for their strange way of life and antisocial behavior, choosing to avoid their home in August 2018 as a result. Another disagreement. After Courtney hurriedly packed her belongings into a suitcase and fled into the street, Judy became irate and said, "I won't stay here any longer." A few moments later, an enraged Joshua, who was over 6 feet tall and 300 pounds, forcibly lifted Courtney, who weighed 160 pounds, and carried her back into the house. Judy couldn't resist, according to a neighbor, and this was the last time this neighbor, or perhaps anyone outside the household, saw Courtney. The young woman, who had lived a life of invisibility, remained for nearly 2 years before neighbors and acquaintances. Concerns about Courtney Holden's whereabouts first surfaced in October 2019, a year and a half after her disappearance. Her child's father and his current girlfriend had not seen Courtney in almost 2 years, and the father was eager to see his child. On October 24th, the father of Courtney's son filed a missing person report with the police. Armed with a search warrant, the police went to the Holden residence and were surprised to find Courtney indeed not there. Neither Joshua nor Judy was willing to assist the authorities. Courtney's stepmother gave detectives permission to go into her room, but then requested that they leave the house as soon as possible. Search dogs were even brought in, but to no avail. The Holdens claimed that Courtney had abandoned her son and fled, but they were unable to determine who was using the electronic food stamps or continuing to cash the Social Security benefits that had been deposited into her account. However, on the day that the search was carried out at the Holden residence, Judy and Joshua took the remaining $600 out of Courtney's bank account. A coincidence happened the following day when a woman posing as Courtney called the National Center for Criminal Information in America. She said she was safe and didn't want to be searched. Police tracked down the caller and discovered that the woman was one of Courtney's stepsisters. Later, Joshua and Judy gave conflicting accounts of Courtney's disappearance, claiming she ran away with a truck driver in one version and that she had a secret lover that she kept hidden from everyone else in another. The Holden suspects were obviously hiding something. Judy and Joshua Holden fled Spokane quickly by the end of October 2019, and their flight only served to persuade investigators that they were involved in Courtney's disappearance. The Holdens were found in Texas at the residence of one of Judy's adopted daughters, where authorities charged them with cashing benefits intended for Courtney, as well as identity theft, enabling their arrest and detention in a Texas jail. The Spokane Police Department attempted a welfare check on Courtney in early October, but at Quai, this report on Courtney's disappearance was made public by the Superior Court, and the investigation's foundation is made up of court documents and police interviews. When Judy and Joshua Holder visited the home for various reasons, they refused to cooperate with the investigation. This is unusual behavior when it comes to welfare checks and missing persons cases. On the day Courtney was officially declared missing, a woman claiming to be her called crime check to say she was fine the police. Alerts were sent to all states and several news. Broadcasts featured the missing person case initiating an extensive search for her. Additionally, the dispatcher spoke with the lady posing as Courtney. Later, it was learned that the woman was actually Courtney's sister, who had not disclosed to anyone why she had assumed Courtney's identity, possibly in an attempt to divert Judy's attention and put an end to the search. Lesser stated in an interview with the Spokesman Review, "I'm concerned that she might be deceased." Many people voiced specific concerns regarding Joshua's violent past. Joshua had previously faced assault charges, but the case was dismissed before the trial because the victim refused to cooperate with the prosecution's investigators. After a DNA sample was obtained, court records from that case, and descriptions of Joshua by neighbors and family revealed that he had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, was unemployed, and that Judy feared him. Holden was also suspected of being involved in another assault back in 2003. Family members claimed that Joshua and Judy boasted to them about knowing how to avoid the police, and Joshua made remarks about how simple it would be to end someone's life and hide the evidence. Joshua had also been arrested on charges of unlawful imprisonment, domestic abuse, and burglary. People don't just vanish, especially if they have a child. Court records revealed that Courtney was a devoted mother who would never leave her child behind. For a period of 1.5 years, Courtney was not visible outside of her home. Joshua and Judy informed their relatives, friends, and neighbors that she was on the road with a truck driver whom nobody had met. Rumors would sometimes go about that she had run off with her fiancé, and other times she was purportedly just inside the house, but not available for visits. When Courtney knocked on Judy's house in early October, she informed him that Courtney had only been home a few days prior. She added that Courtney had departed on foot with her son, and when Courtney requested for Judy's phone number, she shut the door. Court records. She later grew quite anxious and reluctantly let the cops into Courtney's room to view it. To make matters worse, the house was incredibly disorganized, with heaps of stuff taking up every available area on counters. Lesser written in the court records. Additionally disorganized, and with a bare mattress, Courtney's room gave the impression that no one had ever lived there. Less was once noticed. When Judy realized one of the detectives was hiding behind a closed door, she became alarmed and begged them to leave. Later that day, a neighbor informed Judy that the cops had failed to look throughout the house for Courtney's child. Observed Joshua Judy and one of Courtney's sisters drove off in a van with a child. The detective also noticed that Courtney, who had a chronic illness, had not seen a doctor since October 2017, and that her last prescription had been filled in July 2018, even though there was a gap in her medical records. Additionally, money continued to be taken out of Courtney's bank account each month, and her EBT card was used for grocery shopping. Surveillance footage showed Josh, Yue, and Judy shopping with a small child, and cameras captured the couple taking the remaining funds from Courtney's bank account on the day she was reported missing in early October. A month after the Holdens left, a neighbor called the police to report activity at the house. It was one of Judy's daughters and her husband who had flown in from Texas to check on the property. They said they hadn't seen Courtney for 2 years and that Judy had retired. The man told the police that Joshua and Judy had a mobile number. Lesser wrote that the DVR from the home surveillance system had been removed and the family's 6 pets were gone when police arrived to execute the search warrant. Lesser traveled to Texas in mid-December in search of Judy and Joshua. The police discovered them at Judy's daughter's home, along with Courtney's son. Joshua and Judy Holden were detained on suspicion of identity theft, interfering with custody, using Courtney's bank accounts, and hiding her child. The child was found safe and successfully returned to his father. No other family members were charged with a crime. The police used search dogs to search Judy's Spokane home, but were sadly unable to locate Courtney. The cops also looked through Judy's trailer-parked car at an Oklahoma RV facility. Joshua, 40, and Judy, 74, were detained in Texas and refused to speak with police. They also refused to be extradited to Spokane, so police waited for a governor's warrant to return them. Since the police were unable to establish their connection to Courtney's disappearance, they were probably released. This is likely one of the most complex missing person cases. Less is known about the month-long investigation. I have 4 notebooks with various types of information in them. Judy and Joshua continue. Reported. The first is the societal presumption that it will be handled by someone else. According to Morgan Kern, the YWCA's Director of Counseling, Advocacy, and Outreach, people may perceive fear of revenge as a reason. In addition to Joshua's known aggressive behavior, he had also stated he could end someone's life and successfully hide the body from the police investigators who believe Courtney is deceased but have not made any arrests related to her case. He said that despite the aforementioned charges, Judy and Joshua have not been charged with anything directly related to Courtney's disappearance. Many people still believe they know what happened to Courtney. It is deeply regrettable that Joshua Holden's bold public claims about his ability to end a life and hide a body cannot be used as evidence of his involvement in Courtney's disappearance. Especially since after that fateful evening when he forcibly took her back into the house, she was no longer able to stand up for herself. The Holden family and this young girl who dreamed of family and love lacked the courage to stand up for herself. She firmly believed that even these people who yelled at her, mistreated her, and made her work for them were her family. There are countless ways to covertly dispose of a body using various chemicals that neither experts nor police dogs can detect, which suggests that if Courtney was harmed that evening, her spirit still lingers in the Holden estate where she sought a family but found her demise. Instead, her young son was removed from the Holden household and placed under the care of his father, where he remains to this day. Courtney Holden is still listed as missing. If you have any information that could help, possibly assist with the investigation, kindly get in touch with the Spokane Police Department. Thank you for your attention, guys. Jack, there are a lot of amazing stories ahead of you if you subscribe to the channel, TS as it is.